recently got back into Warhammer and I wanted to experiment with the Spawn of Chaos, or Slaves to Darkness Chaos Spawn as they're now known. This is a pretty old kit and I don't think it gets enough recognition because of the amount of parts that are available. And when you know how to sculpt, you can create these amazing monstrosities. This one is inspired by the Spider Lady from Love, Death and Robots. There's a particular episode that is mind-blowing where a pilot of a spacecraft ultimately winds up ending in the Chaos Warp, if you ask me, and his entire reality is broken and shattered as he replays the same events while not understanding that this creature is manipulating his reality and he is ultimately starving to death. And I loved the design of that creature, very Lovecraftian horror, and I wanted to have almost like a Slaneshi take on it with the spider aspects of it. It still needs to retain a level of humanity. There needs to be a human aspect to all Chaos Spawn, in my opinion. So it's very important to keep human traits. Here is one that is inspired by Nurgle. This one was thrown together with Chaos Possessed, I think it is, parts, and the Blight Kings with Chaos Spawn parts. To be honest, parts are really hard to recognize because I've had them for over 20 years. So I just kind of threw all these things at the wall and just hope it stuck. The majority of this body is sculpted from scratch. There is Warhammer parts, but it's borderline unrecognizable. I think there is a Chaos Spawn body in there at the top, but maybe it was only the front plate and the back plate was sculpted, or vice versa. I'm not quite sure. This one, there was only the feet. Actually, the feet came from a Chaos Possessed, and then the rest was sculpt and minor parts from the Chaos Spawn sprue, and then skulls. Yeah. Anyways, it was very Khorne inspired. I wanted to have the skeleton skulls, skulls for the Skull Throne, but embedded in his flesh as his flesh mutates with tentacles erupting and teeth and eyeballs everywhere. Very Cronenberg, it reminds me of the Rick and Morty episode where they, alter everybody's genetics. And that's kind of what this was inspired by. This one was inspired by the idea of a jester, a fool, an idiot. Again, the whole concept of Chaos Spawns are that they lose their mind in the ascension because they are granted too many gifts at once via losing favor of their chaos gods and mutating. There is a very Tzeentch aspect, a very Lovecraftian horror with the tentacles, very Cthulhu-like, with the bones, his spine erupting into wings. That is really, really cool in my opinion. I feel like the blue horror aspect is very important with Tzeentch, because it's like his little mini demons, so they're like all over his body bursting out. You can see the front half was like, oh, you almost got there, bro. You almost became ascended. You almost got to the point of ascension as a chaos demon prince. But yeah, ended up failing, no eyes. And again, something very similar here. The eye is on the hand, but again, very xenomorph. I wanted it to have like a beastman element, but also again that blue horror, skin tearing. Tzeentch is inspired very much so by birds, so I wanted to have it look like birds are breaking and bursting out of his back with those spikes representing beaks. So you got the blue horror aspect, you've got the human aspect in there with the hand reaching forward asking for help, save me type thing. But then obviously you've got the very Tzeentch inspired tearing of flesh as his body rips apart with the gifts, if you'd like to call them that, of the Chaos Gods. And he is by far one of the cooler ones because it does have that xenomorph inspiration. This one is inspired by Bloodborne, the failed Great One, the One Reborn. As you can see, he's got the skull, the body, his once humanoid body bursting out the top, while tentacles flail everywhere as other heads scream in agony. I think there's about 3 faces in their heads that are then stretched to look like his flesh was just tearing off his body. Well, his once body. Now the rest of this is just his body. Eyeballs, tentacles, blood sacs, and these tentacles, obviously, because it's very Slaneshi inspired, you can kind of interpret that how you will. The hands are now his feet. He basically walks around. I was tempted to go like the tripod route, but ultimately scrapped that idea. Also, I've been doing a lot of greater demons. I'm a big fan of the greater demon concept. A god putting an avatar of itself out there. And the Lord of Change normally has one-headed, sometimes two-headed, big, great, giant spell-casting birds. And I just thought to myself, why does it have to be one head? Why does it have to be 2 heads? Kratos, Fate Weaver, cool, went into the well, came out with 2 heads. One lies, one tells the truth. One sees the future, one sees the past, but can't necessarily see the present. So I thought to myself, well, why not just break that stigma and just have a 5-headed version? Why? Because it's fun and it's cool. And Games Workshop gives us tons of parts. So I just thought, hey, why not? And obviously I wanted to paint it very Tzeentch-y with tons of blues. And I wanted to emphasize the bird aspect of it. So gave the chicken heads, very vibrant yellows, and yeah, just very magical, because obviously a lot of the army, the Slaves of Darkness, tends to be quite gloomy. So yeah. Which brings me to this video's sponsor. This is Golden Maple brushes, and I gotta say, these are by far the best brushes I've ever used. I'm used to using old, tattered, battered brushes, generic, no brand, bought off Amazon. That was the norm for a long period of time. Cheap, easy to come by. $10, $12. Golden Maple were kind enough to send me these out, and I gotta say, I've been using them now for nearly 2 weeks straight, 10-hour painting sessions at least, and these brushes are phenomenal. I highly recommend purchasing these via my code SYM, SYM, off their website, and I gotta say, you won't be disappointed. Thanks again, Golden Maple, for sponsoring this video. So I got those brushes, and I haven't painted in roughly about 5 years miniatures. I kind of put Warhammer down for a bit, but now I've come back to it, and man, I wanted to try out contrast paints, and I do believe that they are better at glazing, but oh man, the results speak for themselves. Not only that, but I was able to get like all the little tiny details that I'd already sculpted onto this guy, and I wanted to give him a very Cronenberg look, so he's got red, but still this humanoid essence, and that's very important with Spawn of Chaos. I like to have a little tiny bit of human being left as they mutate and turn into these unrecognizable monstrosities. Oh man, it's so much fun. And then we move on now to the arachnoid one. Very Slaneshi. I wanted to add pinks and the skin, flesh, like tearing and mutating. So therefore it's got like this arachnoid look to it with like these black eyes. And I wanted like an orangey brown tone to it. Man, this one was up there. I really enjoyed this, and then dremeling out that arm as well to make it look like a mouth for screaming. Again, the human aspect needs to be there. This one as well, this one's very Slaneshi inspired. He's got like all these tentacles that kind of look like, well, pink and slimy, and yeah, just like spurting out of this dude with like a hidden eyeball there. Like these things were so enjoyable to paint. Skin stretching and mutating, but this is still flesh. This is still a human being that has been completely and utterly transformed by the chaos gods into this screaming monstrosity, crying for help as it's in absolute agony as it transforms the human head there, stretching and screaming in agony. And again, the human aspect on this one, you got the hand. I wanted to have that transition, and this one's obviously inspired by Tzeentch. There's lots of blues, lots of greys. There is still almost like a failed demon prince. That's the whole essence of a spawn of chaos. And I believe that this one, he transcended and he almost got there, but no eyes. Just very Cthulhu inspired. This one again, very blue horror. The human aspect, you've got the hand kind of reaching out asking for help, as you got that Xeno tail black. I wanted obviously to have that kind of influence and reference, but again, the blue horror aspect of it, the transition of the bird aspects. It's got birds bursting out of his back, the beaks there you can kind of see as the flesh tears and rips and changes color through the transformation. The Tzeentch inspired aspect of it is very strong, and I'd even like to say that there's a bit of beastmen in there, so maybe this wasn't even a human at some point. It was a beast lord that had transcended via the influences of Tzeentch, and ultimately this was his fate. And it's so important to show the aspect of despair. These these champions tried to gain favor from their chaos gods, and I mean, ending up like this is poor sod. I mean, he's got eyeballs bursting out of left, right, all over the show. The chaos champion aspect there, with the emerald type helmet, there is an essence of favor, but then ultimately the fall of favor is this tentacled monstrosity with its guts hanging out and its back ripped open and very nurgly. I love painting the nurgle aspects and having the greens and the purples, just awesome. So for future projects, I did end up buying a Demon Prince. I love the concept of Demon Prince since it's in association with the Spawn of Chaos here. The Spawn of Chaos are failed demon princes. This is essentially what you could end up like when you are favored by the chaos gods, but it's very rare, and that's why I like the spawn concept. I also got this spearhead box set that I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with yet, but I'm looking forward to painting them to build up the roster and build up the army. I have these. I think I bought them back in 2014, and I'm going to convert them somehow, so there's that to look forward to.
And many other projects soon to come. As always, a massive thank you and shout out to the Patreon members. I appreciate you greatly. Thank you so much.